There's one very important theme that many civil engineering companies don't think about when they're building a culture and growing their company. In this week's episode, Rene Portieles, CEO of Epic Forensics and Engineering, is going to tell us how his company is focusing everything around that theme and how it's helping them build a company where engineers want to work. Let's jump right in. This Civil Engineering Entrepreneurs series is brought to you by Big Time. Big Time is the industry-leading PSA software providing time tracking, billing, and project management for engineering firms, with the goal of getting your business back to business. You can learn more about Big Time's PSA solution at bigtime.net. All right, now I'd like to welcome our guest onto the podcast for today. Rene, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Thank you, Anthony. Pleasure to be here.
So Rene, I gave you a little bit of an intro. I introed you to our guest, but kind of in your own words, tell our guests what you're doing on a daily basis at Epic on a day-to-day basis.
Well, it's funny because this year I finally transitioned into what I really do on a day-to-day basis. Previously, I was running pretty much the entire business, from ordering pens to desks for people, to dealing with office furniture and performing underwater investigations. Actually, I really do still miss those. I've managed to replace myself in many aspects in the day-to-day. So now I can really truly focus on servicing the client and truly being there for the staff to enhance their work. For example, I can mentor every employee and guide them through all technical and procedural tasks. So the firm now, even though it still runs very effectively, I think the clients are feeling more of that personal touch, because I have more time to really dedicate to that personal one-on-one instead of being all tied up day to day, worrying about how the printer is running.
Got it. That's great. And Rene, take us back a little further then for a minute, back to kind of like the origin story of the company. Tell us how the company got started.
Sure. So the company, first it started off at Kimley Horn and Associates. And they're thousands of employees, 87 or so, I forget how many offices they have now nationwide. I was part of their building forensics team, of the structural team. I also designed bridges there for the structural group and did interstates and highways and mast arms and lighting. But then I ended up falling into the building forensics category. What happened though, unfortunately, is there were some potential conflicts. Because they're a national company, some of the experts and the industry leaders that were in a lawsuit here in Florida, they were Kimley Horn's major clients in other states. So you can see there's a big potential conflict there. They decided to close that division. I decided to open it under Epic Forensics Engineering. And that's how it all got started.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. And obviously you're still going and going strong. And as you said, you're doing what a lot of business owners have to do when company starts to grow is, kind of carefully take yourself out of some aspects of the business, staying involved in other aspects and making sure that, what the intention was and the way that this company interacts with clients can still remain, even if it's not maybe you on every phone call, which is never an easy thing to do for sure. So that's all good. So before we get a little bit more into the building, the company side of things, I know you and I talked a little bit earlier, talk a little bit about your family's history in contracting and how that can also be very valuable in what you're doing here.
Sure. Well, there are, like you said in some of your old podcasts, there's different aspects to engineering. There's the engineering part and there's a construction part. And what I'm doing now is actually a third branch to that, which is the forensics part. And that kind of evaluates how the engineering, what goes wrong, and then in construction, what goes wrong. And when you get those two trains and crash them together, then what goes wrong sometimes becomes a little more involved. And that's the forensics engineering portion of it. So my father had a construction company. I am still a general contractor for his construction company. He retired long ago. And he actually built mausoleums. So I was able to do, those this is a terrible joke, but condominiums for the dead is what he built. And then when I got into buildings, I started designing condominiums for the living. So that's an old family joke, even though now that I say it out loud, it's really not that funny, but it is still to us, to the family. But that's how you really become well-rounded, by knowing the construction aspect of what can go wrong there, the engineering aspect and the deadlines that you're put on, and the constraints. It could be some financial constraints. And then what happens when it gets built and the city gets involved, and then we have to do things on the fly to get things up and running again. And that's really where I see a lot of the issues come from. And that's where the forensics is really a well-rounded way of looking deeper into those two, engineering and the construction realm.
That's great. And for those listeners still that may be a little unclear as to what forensics are in engineering, would you say it's when your investigation, like after a failure or something happens, how would you describe it to someone?
Correct. So basically what happens is, what we deal with is, there's many different branches of forensics. What I personally do, and what really our bread and butter here is when a condominium is built, the owner, the developer, wants to transition it, get away from it and build something else, which is great. In that process, it gets turned over to the association. The association then takes that, and they're responsible now for repairing it and fixing it and moving forward. Just like if you, Anthony, go out and get a new car, the dealer is the developer, pretty much, let's just call it that. And then he transitions it over to you, and now you become the owner. Well, you want that when you receive that new car, that is supposed to be a brand new car, that the tires are inflated and you have a proper oil change and the windows work and the Bluetooth connects and all that great stuff is happening. The problem is because of the complex systems of a condominium, a lot of those things don't get initiated, if you would, and it causes construction defects. And you may move in to your beautiful penthouse unit, and it rains and water comes right through the window and floods your unit and floods the unit below and the unit below and the unit below. So they call Epic Forensics Engineering. We come in, we do an entire evaluation. We're a full service discipline. So we do mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, windows, glass and glazing, everything about a building we do. We go in there and do a full, very detailed evaluation of the building, and then come up with a list of deficiencies that the building has that should be remediated. So for example, going back to the car thing, we would say, hey, your tires, your back tire's bald, your brakes don't work, your Bluetooth doesn't connect, your paint's fading here and fading there. And that was done because there was a defect in the factory or a defect in the installation of that product.
That's great. That's clear. And so I'm assuming your clients could be different, but in some respects, it sounds like it would be like the homeowners association. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. All right, great. No, that's great. I wanted to just kind of ask Rene about that because we haven't covered forensics all that much on the podcast. So it's good to get into something a little bit different here. So
Okay.
let's turn to the business side of things now. Obviously, this is part of our Civil Engineering Entrepreneurs series, and you explained to us that this Epic came from breaking off from a larger engineering company. You decided to go with that and take it and grow it. So let's talk about growing a business. I know a lot of things are kind of in the beginning of a company, you're just getting going. You want to get money coming in, start building the company. And you really start to think about things like a mission and vision for a company, which becomes important as the company grows. Talk about what a mission and vision means to you in terms of growing a company, and how you utilize it at Epic.
Right. Well, our mission vision in growing a firm, it all boils down to, it's engraved in our key values of operations. It all just boils down to passion. Our vision incorporates finding what really drives every single individual at Epic Forensics. So for example, we say, hey, what's your passion? And that question, you'd be surprised, a lot of people don't really know it yet. It is very common that an employee joins Epic's doing one thing, and then they transition into something totally different, because that switching of roles is something that the firm matches to their passion, not the other way around. So each individual is passionate about what they do. If the individual flourishes because they're passionate about it, they will flourish, which causes their group to flourish. And then that snowball effect continues on to the entire firm. And the entire firm is now flourishing just because we found a passion for this individual. So if you think about it, our growth is directly connected to the passion of the individual. Finding that goal to us is key. This passion-based focus doesn't just have limits, it has no limits on growth. And I think that it makes our firm really stand out.
That's awesome. No, I love that approach because, I mean, for anyone out there that has to lead a team in any way, you know that when people are plugged in and they're passionate about what they're doing, they're usually much more productive, much happier, things go much more smoothly. And it's one of those things where, I think a lot of companies think of a mission and vision. They focus more on the company and not on the people that work there. And I know even at EMI here, we're always asking our team about what their goals are in their career and in their lives, and we try to help them with that. I mean, my philosophy has always been, if your company can't help the people that are working there kind of achieve their goals, then kind of, what are we doing here? I mean, that's you can't just
Exactly.
be focused on the company. You got to be focused on the people. So I really, really love that approach. And in terms of communicating that with your company, Rene, is that just like go on ongoing conversations that you have, it sounds like, with them?
Oh my goodness, yes. Our employees here are constantly bombarded with our vision. We state it from the interview process to multiple conversations on a personal level. It constantly comes up in conversation. And Anthony, I don't know, you can probably tell by now, but I'm a bit animated. So talking passionately about topics comes really natural to me. And that positivity really gets transitioned throughout everyone here at Epic Forensics. And everybody understands that because we ingrain it in them from the first day. Please find what you're good at. And we have actually a program here at Epic that you get to walk through every single discipline. It's a training program that I learned back a long time ago when I used to work for the FDOT. They used to put new engineers, into a training program that allowed every engineer to go into different disciplines so that they would find what they're good at. I love that about the FDOT, and I brought that into Epic Forensics, and we've been very, very successful doing it here.
That's awesome. I love that because I feel like that's always one of the things in civil engineering that's challenging, is that there are so many sub disciplines, so many different things you can do in the world of civil engineering. It's kind of like, how the hell can you expect a recent graduate to go out into their career and know that they want to be a structural engineer and just jump into that and then go with that for the rest of their career? And it was kind of from me because I started doing some structural work. I wasn't crazy about it. Luckily, I worked for a multidisciplinary firm, so they let me then try some geotech. Wasn't crazy about it. Then I found land development. I loved it, and I ended up sticking with that. But like, I didn't even really know what land development was after college,
Right, right.
let alone like that I would figure that out. So I love the idea of a rotational program like that,
Right.
which is awesome. So, how big is the company right now, Rene?
Oh, we're about 30 employees,
Okay.
and we service clients all in Florida. We will service clients in Georgia and Texas as well. We have engineers scattered throughout Miami, Kendall, Fort Lauderdale, Jupiter, Orlando, Sarasota.
Wow.
I sit here in the West Palm Beach office, so we cover South Florida pretty good.
That's great. So, all right. So you're scaling up. You mentioned at the beginning of the show here that you're starting to remove yourself in some areas in a good way, in a way that the company can scale and grow. So, what are some of the typical problems that you see in engineering firms when they're trying to scale? Since you're going through that process now, I'm sure you've seen some of these.
It has to do with in the industry, the work product, when they try to scale out really big, they have one thing in mind: win, 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 very large projects at all costs. And unfortunately, in this field, they end up undercutting. And in order to undercut all the competition, it really hurts them because their portfolio looks great right now. Wow, look at all these great projects that the industry, that this guy XYZ whatever has in their portfolio. But if you actually look at the work product, it's washed out, and due to the undercut, because of the cost, they can't really spend the time to get into the details that are required for complex cases. And I'm speaking in both engineering design and in forensics work. The details are simply lost if you try to grow too fast. Due to this, settlements are not what they should be, and clients are paying for this at the long run. You got to understand that in order to grow, what do you need? You need constant hiring. However, if you hire too many young individuals at one time, those individuals unfortunately do not get the adequate training. They don't get that roundabout training where they get to see every single discipline. They get to see all the different aspects of your firm and then be able to fit themselves into a certain role. And the problem with that is that those people are just simply not well-rounded engineers, and it really hurts their future. That's why, to me, it's so important that if you're with a firm that that you see you're getting stuck into something that you don't really like, or that there's issues with too much fast growth, not enough mentorship, then that's really what you need to focus on to do what you really want to do and have passion for.
Yeah, that's great, and I totally hear
And it
what you're
happens,
saying.
Anthony, it happens so much. I can't even believe it.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I hear it a lot when companies are growing because, like you said, they want to win more work, and then they go through the hiring process and they're taking on as many people as they can, but that
Right.
doesn't allow them to grow productively, and things start to break. Right, when you start to grow too fast, things can start to break. So, kind of going in that direction. Obviously, you're talking a lot about people there. Let's talk about people and people development at Epic. How do you find, develop, retain people? What are some of the things you do to try to? You mentioned before that having well-rounded professionals is important. What is your strategy for that? How do you approach that at Epic?
Okay, Anthony, those are trade secrets, buddy. I can't tell you any of that stuff. No, I'm sorry. In all seriousness, I am baffled on how good news travels in such a small industry. I mean, people hear how our office is set up and want to be a piece of it. It's crazy for me to say this out loud, but they really do come to us. Once they're here, they're masters of their destiny. They determine what work they want to do. We simply provide a side-by-side mentorship to make that happen. We are extremely little to no staff turnover.
Wow.
A lot of engineers in firms say, well, bring somebody in, we'll train them to do what they want to, we'll just train them to do X, Y, Z. Well, maybe that's not how that engineer is going to be able to progress. You need to come in and say, bring that person in. Let's have this period of establishment where they really get to feel out all the different aspects to the firm, and then be able to come to us and tell us how their career can enhance. And then we are just there to make that happen.
That's awesome. I mean, listen, I
don't know if I answered the question, because I think I got a little off topic there.
No, I think what I'm hearing from you, and I think what I've been hearing the whole time from you is, you put a big emphasis on your people's passions, their goals, where they want to go in their career. You try to train them, of course, in the right skills they need, but you try to match those two together. Yeah. And to me, that would make sense that people would hear about you, because I do think that, unfortunately for civil engineering professionals, I do think that approach is still kind of in the minority in the industry. Whereas, sometimes you get forced down a path with a company because there's already paths set up for you and you don't have a lot of say in it, and you don't necessarily get the right training. And so I could totally see why the word would spread about a culture like yours, because it's one, for me, dealing with a lot of engineering professionals and asking them about what they want in their careers. A lot of what you're explaining is what they want, and really what it speaks to from my perspective in building a company is find out what your team wants, what they need, and support them.
Yeah. And that, I mean, it happened to me as well. When I came out of my master's program in structural engineering, I said, hey, I want to design bridges because structural guys design bridges. And that was my mindset. And I've always wanted to design bridges since I was a kid. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to design bridges with Kimley Horner Associates. But then when I got that opportunity to do some buildings, I said, oh my goodness, I had no idea that I would love the building forensics so much. And that's, I think, where, that mind shift came from. And I said, I can't be the only guy thinking like this. So that's why we really embrace that here.
Yeah, and hence the rotational program, like you said, that gives people the opportunity to try those different things, which is awesome. All right, so one last question for you, Rene, before we go into our hot seat segment here. If there are, well, I know there are civil engineers out there that are building businesses, building their own companies, just trying to take the path that you've taken. What advice would you give them just from your overall experience to date in growing Epic? What can you offer to them in the way of advice that really stood out for you in building the company that you would have, you wish someone would have maybe told you?
Sure. Let's see. I'll answer it like this. A few years ago, Anthony, you posted a video about creating a career experience you love. Everybody's saying this, but do they actually act on it? The advice that I would give engineers trying to grow their company is, be true to what you like to do. Don't just do it for the paycheck. It doesn't get, to me, it doesn't get any simpler than that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I agree with you too, that a lot of people say it and don't do it. So it's one of those things that it's, that's why I was saying earlier, it's nice to hear someone in your position that can promote that to their staff and their team, because, I think it's one of those things where engineers say, well, I would love to take that approach, but there's no way that my company would support me in that approach. They want me to kind of fit into a certain, manual that they have here, org chart that they have here. And it sounds like not doing that is a really good way to build a really good culture.
Right.
All right, so we're going to take a pause here, and we're going to come back in a minute, and we're going to put Rene on the civil engineering hot seat. All right, we're back with Rene Portieles, CEO of Epic Forensics and Engineering, and it is time to put Rene on the civil engineering hot seat. Rene, you ready?
Yes, sir. I'm ready.
All right. All right. So, first question for you: are there any specific rituals that you practice every day? For example, do you have a specific morning routine, lunchtime routine, something that you do consistently on a daily basis that has contributed to your success?
Absolutely. My ritual is to not have a ritual. Look, I try to do different things every day. This way I can see things from a different perspective. I always feel that if you get too deep in one particular way of doing things, it's very easy to start causing blinders to be installed. The world becomes very rosy because for you, that ritual, it's your ritual, it's perfect. But it may be hindering your out of the box thinking because you're really not exposing yourself to different points of view every single day. I try to use this procedure through so many different aspects of my life. And let me tell you that if you try this a couple times, it's very difficult to do because you really end up falling into that same rut. But if you can get yourself out of that, try it for just a few days, you're going to see how your whole day is just, you're looking at it from a different perspective.
That's awesome. That's scary to me, but that's awesome. Of course, because I'm an engineer that tries to follow the same stuff every day. But I'm down for it. I'll definitely I'll give it a shot for sure. All right, next question here, Rene. What is one book that you might recommend to engineers, or one book any book that you found to be helpful for you, maybe in your personal or professional development efforts?
Anthony, the building code, of course. Along with any mechanics and materials textbook. All right, let's get a little crazy right now. So just bear with me on this one.
Okay.
Right? Everything in life can be analyzed by one mechanics and material equation. Now, yes, I'm getting a little nerdy on that, but that is P over A plus or minus MC over I. What does that mean? It's how much loading can be placed on something before it collapses. Guys, it's not just for structures, but in life, how much can one person bear before they can no longer take it? Including all exterior bending forces that cause one person to simply give up or just collapse. So having that equation in mind, it really keeps you determined to balance that equation so that you don't give up and don't get crushed or collapsed under any situation in life. And you can apply that to anything.
That's awesome. No, I really like that because I think the one thing that can kind of catch up with anybody in your career and your life and building a business and in any endeavor is that stress factor. I mean, everyone's running a million different directions today. We dealt with this whole pandemic as of recently, which put a lot of stress on parents and professionals and business owners and everybody, quite frankly. And I think building, whatever it is, habits, systems, anything that can help you in terms of reducing stress for you, your staff, can be very valuable. In fact, that's one of the things we do here is I'm always thinking about as we build EMI, how can we build it in a way that isn't, not, it's never no stress, but lower stress to our staff. Because I think the last thing you want to do is say, hey, the company's doing great, we're making a lot of money, but everyone's working a million hours and no one's happy with, at home or at work, right? So I really love that approach, and and it's great that it ties in as an engineering analogy kind of to business building, to life, and that's awesome. So that I really like that one a lot. All right, two more to go here. Thinking back on some of your managers throughout your career, Rene, maybe you can picture your favorite manager or managers, and you don't need to name any names here, but what made this manager or these managers your favorite?
Okay, so I'm going to take this in three separate levels. For client service and interaction, one of my managers, and to be honest, it wasn't even my manager, it was my colleague's manager that I kind of like wedged myself in there and made him my mentor, even though he was in a totally different discipline, doing totally different field. But he would always tell me, and that was Dave Bart of Kimberly Hunter Associates. He would always say, well, do you like the decision that you're making? And he would always say, what's the real benefit here? You, the company's bottom line, or is it the client's best interest? Now, of course, the best decision is to be able to handle all three of those. But it really isn't hard. If you focus on the decision that really makes you happy, you'll see that the company's bottom line will come with you and the client will give you multiple in return. The second, I would say, would be like team building. And that would be my first manager that I ever had. And that would be my father, Rene Portieles. He would always say, build the perfect team and perfection will simply guide you through. And that's 100% true. You're surrounded by good people. Nothing comes out of a good relationship than good things. And if you look at actual production of things, I would say one of my biggest clients of all time, which I won't give you his name, but he really went out of his way to make sure that everything that I would deliver was perfect. And I would drastically change the way I was doing things on a day-by-day basis so that I would make his life easier. And at the end of the day, making his life easier made my life so much easier. So I think, Anthony, those would be the three managers that really put a big impact on not just my performance, but my mindset as well.
That's awesome. And I think what we can take away from Renee's answer there is that you can learn a lot from the people that you look up to, that manage you, that are mentors for you, and it's all about what you take away from them and then how you apply it going forward. And Rene, you did a great job there and like kind of distilling those things down to a couple of real solid principles that you can act on as you move forward, as you build your company, and probably affect other people there as well, which is great. But I think that's also a good thing to think about from the flip side. Like when you're managing someone or you're a team leader or a company leader, what are you giving to your team that they can build on? Like Rene's saying, he's going to build on for the rest of his career. He's taken this advice and he's continued to use it over and over and over. So I think that that's a great way to think about it. All right, Rene, I've got one final question here. We call it the civil engineering career elevator advice question. If you got into an elevator with an engineer, you had maybe 30, 40 seconds with him or her, and you had to give, some career advice in that short period of time, what would that advice be?
Oh my goodness. I would absolutely say, make a decision and just move forward with it. No flipping and flopping. If you're true to your coworkers, true to your decisions, no scheming and conniving. Be true with your team members, be true with your leaders. Be a member of the team by moving the team forward and helping them, not by riding of the coattails on your team's achievements. You're a badass. Act like it and own it. I think that was about 40 seconds.
No, that's great. I mean, yeah, I think that indecision can be definitely
Oh,
problematic in people's careers.
absolutely.
And, sometimes you got to go for it, make a decision, stick with it. And if it doesn't work out, a lot of times if it doesn't work out. And this is something that I took out of when I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, which was, what's the worst thing that could happen? I mean, listen, you're going to get another shot. I mean, something else is going to happen. You're going to get another opportunity, and you might not get to go back though and take that chance again. And so that's something definitely to think about. So once again,
Right.
Rene Portieles, CEO of Epic Forensics and Engineering and Epicenter Laboratories, thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks, Anthony. It was a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Civil Engineering Podcast on YouTube, produced by the Engineering Management Institute. We're always looking for new ways to help engineers become effective managers and leaders. You can view all of our content on our website at engineeringmanagementinstitute.org, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here for our weekly videos. Until next time, please continue to engineer your own success.